Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you had a lovely Easter weekend. If you didn't get the email I sent out, I'm actually extending the intro period for Scoring Synths until Friday the 6th. I feel like some people may not have gotten an opportunity to fully get a sense of the library, and there's a lot going on between the holidays and other big releases, so I decided to extend it a few days. So let's just get started here. I want to show you a technique that I like to use to enhance brass samples. Occasionally, some of the samples perform in a way that I feel is a little bit, I don't know, static or something. They're playing a high dynamic, but there's a certain energy in the attack that seems to be missing, and I can push the performance a little bit further by layering synth sounds behind. So that's kind of what I want to go over in this video. So let's just start off with the brass patch that I have loaded up. I'm using Spitfire Bones Phalanx, and that sounds like this. So let's take a listen to how it sounds with Scoring Synths. All right, so versus very cool. So what Scoring Synths is essentially doing here is it's kind of creating a burst of energy in the attack, and it's also just giving a sense of a bigger ensemble. So let's take a look at what we have loaded up. I've essentially got stabs 1 layered 5 times here. Okay. And let's take a listen to how this would just sound on its own. Okay, so just to kind of make a point, this is how it would sound if you just had one Model D. Okay, if I want to play an octave, since it's a monophonic synth, I'd have to print out another layer or have a completely different Model D patched in. So that's 2 Model Ds. But if I want this huge ensemble sound, let me just mute this. That's 10 Model Ds. So this alone, to me, is just an incredible thing, having the ability to stack multiple instances of a monophonic synth. It's incredible, especially this one that sounds so wonderful. But let's continue. So the way I designed this library was to play well with orchestral instruments and to actually be able to do exactly this, kind of create multis where I've got the library kind of enhancing the orchestral instruments. So what I could do here, depending on how the other library is mapped, I'd use the mod wheel if dynamics were assigned to the mod wheel. But if dynamics were assigned to velocity, Scoring Synths could follow that mapping as well. And then depending on how drastic the dynamics are, you can adjust Scoring Synths to match any given library so that the lower filter settings are potentially very quiet. So whatever the given library, you can match the dynamic curve of Scoring Synths to that library, which is incredibly useful. So one thing I'll say before we get into the mics is when you start stacking instruments like this and say 15 layers of Model D, the phase relationships of having that many layers will inherently push the sound back in a mix. It's like chorus or ensemble or something like that. It essentially kind of blurs the fundamental the more layers you have. So I could get away with just layering the DI like this, but I've got the microphones and they sound great, so I'm just going to kind of start playing around with those and see what we can do with the sound. And occasionally what I'll do is I will turn on a low-pass filter over the synths if they're adding, a ton of bass content. If I really want this to be just a part of the trombone sound, then I'll cut out most of that sub. Could probably even do a little more. Yeah. At its core, I want people to think of this library as like the synth is the new section of the orchestra, right? And I don't need 1,000 different sounds to complement the orchestra. I just want a core set of articulations. And that's what I really tried to provide first and foremost, is a set of sounds that I felt could enhance and complement and reinforce the orchestra.